12 days. That is the deadline Trump gave Iran to make a nuclear deal, or face consequences he described only as very traumatic. The USS Gerald R. Ford crossed the Strait of Gibraltar on February 20th, 2026, combat-hardened pilots, 90 aircraft on deck, orders that nobody published and nobody in Tehran needed to read to understand. The Ford was not on a goodwill tour. It was closing the distance between a presidential ultimatum and the geography required to enforce it. What the press release did not mention was that the Ford was not alone below the surface. Somewhere in the dark water ahead of the carrier's track, running silent at 400 feet, an Ohio-class guided missile submarine had been holding position for 11 days. No surface contact, no emissions, just patience. And 3 days after the Ford cleared Gibraltar, that submarine found something that changed the entire operational picture. It found an Iranian Kilo-class submarine. Following the Ford, Iran operates 3 Kilo-class diesel-electric boats acquired from Russia in the 1990s. They are genuinely capable in shallow, littoral water, quiet at low speed. Armed with wire-guided torpedoes, Iran has maintained them under sanctions through the same determined improvisation it applies to everything. Not perfectly, but well enough to keep them operational. The problem is not the boat. The problem is the environment. Because the acoustic detection infrastructure the United States has built over 70 years creates a situation where an Iranian submarine operating outside home waters is not hunting. It is being hunted, whether it knows it or not. This one did not know. Its acoustic signature had been in the American catalog since the early 2000s. The specific frequency profile of its diesel generators, the harmonic signature of its Iranian overhauled reduction gears, slightly different from the original Russian specification in ways that made it easier to identify, not harder. When the Ohio's sonar operators correlated the contact at 0247 on February 23rd, the recognition was immediate. The track history on that specific boat was 3 pages long. The Kilo was running 38 nautical miles ahead of the Ford's track at 180 feet, moving slowly to conserve battery reserves. At that distance, it was not in attack position. Its passive sonar was picking up the broad acoustic presence of the carrier group, but not achieving the targeting resolution needed to prosecute a weapon. It was surveillance. It was reconnaissance. Iran gathering data on the strike group's acoustic profile, the signature patterns of its escort destroyers, information that would feed Iranian targeting systems if an actual conflict began. That was the rational analysis. What changed the rational analysis was the active ping. At 0312, the P-8 Poseidon that had been orbiting at 40,000 feet for 6 hours passed a classification update to USS Normandy, the Ticonderoga-class cruiser coordinating anti-submarine warfare for the strike group. The Kilo had, at some point in the previous 90 minutes, actively pinged, not a navigation sweep, not a passive search. The frequency and repetition rate matched a weapons systems checkout. The boat was running a pre-attack targeting sequence. The strike group would not alter course. The Ford would hold its track, because changing course under observation from a submarine, running a firing solution, hands targeting geometry data to Iranian planners. The Ohio would close to prosecuting distance. The P-8 would drop an additional sonobuoy barrier. What would happen if the Kilo moved to attack position was already decided. It lived in the rules of engagement document every commanding officer in the strike group carried. The Kilo moved at 0347. The course change was 22 degrees southwest, toward shallower water near the Libyan coast. At first reading, it looked like disengagement. The Iranian crew had detected the sonobuoy pattern they almost certainly had, and repositioned before the Americans achieved a weapons-quality track. Tactically sound, professionally executed. The Ohio's commanding officer had 19 years doing this. He watched the course change and saw something his simulators had taught him to recognize precisely, not as intuition but as geometry. The Kilo was not breaking contact. It was repositioning to a firing bearing. Its new course, projected forward at current speed, would put it at 11 nautical miles from the Ford's track in 47 minutes. 11 nautical miles is inside the attack envelope of the weapon the acoustic signature said it was carrying. The flash message went to Normandy at 0351. 7 words in the brevity code the anti-submarine warfare community uses because 7 words in the right format carry more operational information than a paragraph. The last word was the classification of the Kilo's maneuver. Hostile. At 0409, the Kilo increased speed to 9 knots. For a Kilo-class on battery power with a full torpedo load at 180 feet in warm Mediterranean water, 9 knots is not a transit speed. It is an approach speed. It is the speed you run on the final leg of a firing geometry. The authorization came back at 0413. The Ohio fired 1 Mark 48 ADCAP torpedo, not 2. The fire control solution was clean enough that a second weapon would have been wasteful and twice the acoustic signature. The ADCAP is wire-guided in its initial run, meaning the launching submarine updates the targeting solution in real time until the weapon's own active sonar acquires the target. At that point, the wire cuts and the torpedo handles itself. Its terminal speed makes evasion by a conventional submarine essentially impossible after acquisition. The Kilo crew heard the weapon at 0416 when the ADCAP transitioned from wire-guided to active homing. That sound, what it means, what it signals, what it announces about the next 90 seconds of your life, is something submarine crews train to respond to and never fully prepare for. The Kilo's commanding officer ordered emergency ballast blow, flank speed toward the surface, countermeasures deployed, everything the doctrine required, everything that had any chance of working. The ADCAP impacted at 0417 and 43 seconds. The Ohio's passive sonar logged the detonation as a broadband transient at 196 decibels, followed by the secondary acoustic signature. The anti-submarine warfare community records in its targeting documentation as breaking up noises. A submarine coming apart at depth sounds like nothing else on Earth. The Ford did not alter course. 58 seconds after the detonation, the Ford's flight deck was cycling the next launch. The carrier group had not paused, had not slowed. The engagement below the surface had been executed, reported, and filed, while the ship above continued operating without a single measurable change in rhythm. The individual weapon systems are impressive in isolation. What makes the carrier strike group genuinely dangerous is the integration. P8 acoustic data feeding the Ohio's fire control, feeding Normandy's threat classification, feeding the Ford's battle watch in an architecture that processes faster than any human decision cycle. The Kilo crew were professionals, operating a 1990s platform against a system built specifically to kill it. That is not a metaphor. It is a technical fact. In Tehran, the loss was not confirmed publicly for 72 hours. Iranian state media described a tragic technical malfunction in an unnamed vessel during routine operations. Enough truth to hold domestically. Iranian naval officers know exactly what happened. The acoustic record does not lie. But the domestic audience has no framework to measure the gap between malfunction and destroyed by an American submarine that tracked us for 6 hours while we believed we were undetected. That gap is the size of the entire strategic problem. What followed was silence from Washington. No press release, no statement, no confirmation. Just the USS Gerald R. Ford continuing southeast on schedule, entering the eastern Mediterranean on February 26th, and joining the USS Abraham Lincoln, which had been holding east of Crete for 3 weeks. 2 carrier strike groups, 180 aircraft, 14 surface combatants, and below the surface, an undisclosed number of American submarines. No Iranian naval vessel was tracking the Ford's course. The nuclear talks in Oman were scheduled to resume in 4 days. The Iranian delegation was described as engaged on enrichment, caps a shift from the previous round, where they had refused to discuss caps entirely. Something in Tehran's calculations had changed. Iran knew its submarine was gone. Iran knew why. What Iran did not know was how much else the Americans had been watching, how many other assets had been cataloged, how many other pieces were already inside a fire control solution that had not yet been authorized. That uncertainty does not make Iran stand down, but it makes Iran careful. And careful is the opposite of the coordinated multi-vector response that Iran's deterrence depends on. The submarine at the bottom of the Mediterranean was not the message. It was the proof of concept. The message is what comes next if Tehran gets the arithmetic wrong. The Ford is in position, the Lincoln is in position, the Tomahawks are loaded. And a president who has already demonstrated, several times now, that he will pull the trigger when the deadline runs out is watching a clock that everyone in the region can feel, but nobody has officially announced. 12 days was the deadline. The clock is still running,